Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video, and in today's video I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Robert Whittaker versus Reinier Derrida fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. It's getting some great support and I really appreciate anybody who's, even considered joining at the moment. And so like I say, you can request any sort of combat sporting related content and I will try my best to do it. And again, like I say, thank you very much. And let's get straight into this one. So this is a good matchup, I think. I think it's definitely a an interesting matchup to see made. I mean, when you look at the rankings, of course, you can never really look at the rankings with UFC, but of course, Robert Whittaker is ranked 5 and Reinier Derrida is ranked 13. So he's definitely taken a few steps and a few jumps, but at the same time, he's beaten and coming off a Bo Nickel win, in which definitely would have, if he'd have lost that fight and Bo Nickel would have won via stoppage early on, then it would have been the opposite way around, to be honest. I mean, you can tell that Bo Nickel was getting moved quickly, and I'm sure, Bo Nickel would have been jumped straight into a big fight if he'd have beaten RDR. So, again, I suppose to an extent it's deserved that he's been given this good opportunity, and it's definitely, a good chance for Robert Whittaker to showcase that he's still at the height of the elite of the middleweight division. I mean, the last time he took that step down, of course, was against Aliskerov, and he was able to dismantle Aliskerov in the first round, kind of brutally knocking him out in really impressive fashion. And so, before we get a bit more into this fight, just to speak quickly about the event, I mean, it seems like the UFC have kind of listened to the fans, because the fans have been saying how stacked this card is, and it doesn't really seem like the pay-per-views have been that stacked. I mean, UFC 318 really wasn't that stacked with Holloway, Poirier, and then under that, we really didn't have the best. We had Krylov versus Paulo Costa as the co-main event, and then at the moment 319 doesn't even have a co-main, but it seems like perhaps they might be putting Evloev versus Pico as the co-main of the pay-per-view. Again, I don't know if that's just because of possible injuries or if that's due to financials or anything like that, but it seems like that fight's been moved again, and like I say, might be put onto that card. And to be fair, at the same time, I feel like it's definitely, to an extent, a good thing, because it's giving the fans more of their money's worth, because Evloev Pico is still, it's a good fight, it's a number one contenders fight, and the fans will be, more excited for that in a pay-per-view event. And, this is still a really good card for a fight night. I mean, it's got Yarn versus McGee, which is a very underrated, not really spoke about a tremendous amount matchup, and it was, interesting to see that there was a matchup that was made. Again, it started off very low down on the card, but now it's kind of been bumped up to co-main, in which it deserves. And again, Piotr Jan is aiming to beat an upcoming contender, and if he can do that, then he's solidifying his kind of status in the division in the bantamweight scene. And like I say, he's taking a real big risk in that fight, but like I say, it's a good fight. And then we've also got Bullet on this card as well, trying to make a comeback return after his loss. Krylov Guzkov, a good ranked light heavyweight contest, and Bryce Mitchell versus Saeed Nurmagomedov is a tough test for Mitchell, but it's him moving down in weight, and again, like I say, he's a good name to have on a card. And so yeah, that's like I say, it's a good card to have and to be topped off by this good main event as well. Robert Whittaker, of course, just kind of touched upon him and what he's been doing in recent times, I suppose. I mean, he's making his return after relatively a bit of a long time out. I mean, to be fair, I thought it was longer, to be honest. But it's only 8 months, so not a tremendous amount of time out, for his mouth and his jaw to recover after Chimaev pretty much destroyed it. But like I say, it was quite a brutal ending to the fight, and it was a quick tap. And again, like I say, it seems like that was something which definitely had to take a bit of time at least to heal. And again, it could be a possible reoccurring injury, and I don't think it occurred solely off the strength of Chimaev. I mean, Robert Whittaker has kind of touched upon seemingly in the past that his jaw has that kind of weak vulnerabilities, and again, his teeth don't seem very well protected and things like that. It's like I said, they seem quite just the way that they're naturally kind of just, I suppose, is build the right word? I'm not even sure. But again, like I say, it seems like there is some vulnerabilities in that. And again, I mean, of course, Chimaev, credit to him for taking advantage of that. Did he know about it going into the fight? I'm not entirely sure, but you could tell that there was a real speed, of course, to the tap from Robert Whittaker, and it did catch Chimaev and all of the fans watching off guard. But like I say, that could be a possible reoccurring injury, in which now it's happened once and it was made so public how bad it was. Maybe somebody like an RDR, who is so wrestling heavy for the most part, might be able to capitalize on that again. And I mean, Whittaker, if he has problems in this fight and really could lose badly, or if he does lose badly, or if he, like I say, has bad injury problems as a result of this fight, he could go on to even retire, because I mean, he's not tremendously old. He's 34. RDR's the same age, and it's just the fact that he's been in the UFC since 2012. He's only ever lost against the elite, of course, so again, he's not had a bunch of bad losses. He's not on the slide, but he is again taking a risk here where he could lose and get put back down in the rankings, and it's difficult for him to work his way back up. And especially, like I say, if you've got these reoccurring injuries, you've been in these wars and things like that, it's difficult to be able to get yourself back up again. And I mean, he spoke about on an Ariel Helwani podcast that he is again seemingly trying to make one last title run before he retires. So if he does go on to lose, and possibly lose badly against RDR, this could be the last Robert Whittaker fight in which we're seeing, which would be a shame, because he's a great name to have in the sport, and we've just coming off losing one the week before against Dustin Poirier. So again, we could possibly see the retirement of Robert Whittaker if he does lose. Of course, he is a former champion. He beat Romero in 2017, and I mean, that was for the interim belt. Then he got elevated after GSP retired, and like I say, it was a big achievement for him at the time. Obviously, he was never able to defend it, because he tried to defend it and he lost against Adesanya badly. He got stopped, and of course he's also got stopped against the current champion at the moment, Duplessis. So he's not had the easiest of runs, and like I say, he has lost to the elites. But I mean, other than that, he hasn't. Like I say, he's lost Adesanya twice, um, Duplessis, Chimaev, and then you're looking back the early part of his UFC career when he'd lost previous. So again, like I say, it's not really like he's on a slide at all at the moment. Derrida, though, of course, is coming off a big win himself. He's got the momentum with him. He's currently 3-0 in the UFC, and I'm a fan of the way that he's being built into the UFC. There's a plenty of fighters in which we're seeing at the moment who are automatically getting jumped into the UFC and then getting put into good top contenders fights straight away. Of course, Pico is an example. Patricio Pitbull is an example, Kaya Sakura is an example, Patchy Mix is an example. Again, just four to name, there's quite a few who are getting jumped straight into these big fights after, seemingly looking good in other organizations, but then not looking very good when they do kind of get put in against the top guys. And so, like I say, I like the way that Derrida is kind of building his way up, and he started with a bit of a journeyman type opponent in the UFC with Meerschaert. It was a bit of a lackluster debut where it looked sloppy and messy, but he was able to get the stoppage in the end. And I mean, it wasn't nice on the eye, and I don't feel like the fans were really getting behind him and really expecting much off of that. And again, perhaps that's why he ended up getting a matchup against Bo Nickel, which wasn't favourable. I'm sure the UFC didn't really want Derrida to go on to win that one, because it did expose Bo Nickel, and the fans have kind of turned against him now and things like that. So it's going to be difficult for Bo Nickel to rebuild. Yes, he's young, and yes, he's not had a tremendous amount of experience, so he can only improve in the martial arts side of things. But in general, like I say, the fans are probably going to be against him. It's going to take a bit for the fans to kind of go into more so his favour again. And again, it kind of exposed another American wrestler, which seems to be a common theme at the moment. But like I say, he was able to, of course, stop Bo Nickel, expose him in quite brutal fashion. And of course, he also won via submission early on against Kevin Holland as well. But that was a Kevin Holland in the middleweight division where you can tell that he's clearly not as comfortable, and he doesn't fight the best in that division. It's just the division in which he fluctuates in when he what gets the opportunities and things like that. So I'm a fan of the way that Derrida's building. I think he is improving with that, like I say, the way that he is building. At the same time, I think he's gaining confidence as well. I think he is coming in with quite a lot of confidence in this fight, and he's definitely becoming used to the whole kind of way that the UFC runs and stuff. So I think this is a good opportunity for him to now get a main event slot. And I mean, I've gone from not really rating him after his debut to then thinking, this is possible. He could do a little bit of something in the UFC against after he beat Kevin Holland to then, okay, he's actually a good, could be a top contender here when he beat, of course, Bo Nickel. And if he beats Robert Whittaker with ease, then of course that puts him into contention for, maybe not a title shot straight away, because there is a bit of a queue. There's a good few names who are floating around in the middleweight division that do deserve a title shot. Imavov, Kai Baralio as well. Again, like I said, there's a couple fighters there who definitely deserve one. Of course, the middleweight's main event is happening in the next pay-per-view, but he is definitely going to be a contender in and amongst it if he does beat Robert Whittaker. And of course, he's massive for the weight as well. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how his whole weight cut works because he's 6'4", and like I say, it was obvious that he was clearly just a lot bigger than Bo Nickel in their fight. And yeah, it's just there's a big size to him. He could easily be a light heavyweight, and of course, he was a light heavyweight world champion in Glory. So again, it wouldn't surprise me if perhaps at some point he might even move up into the light heavyweight division. Moving on to speak about both fighters a bit more individually, Robert Whittaker as a fighter is a dynamic striker, and I think that's probably the best way to sum up his whole style. He's got fast hands, good footwork, underrated power in my opinion, and that can be set up by his accuracy, which is pretty good, and like I say, he has that power and that ability to be able to knock out fighters. I mean, of course, the way that he brutally dismantled Alaskarov in the first round was destructive, and Alaskarov has gone away and gotten a first round KO since then. So, he wasn't just an easy opponent to do that against. And I mean, Whittaker's got solid takedown defense. Yes, of course, he got taken down very quickly against Khamzat Chimaev, but at the same time, typically has got a really good takedown defense, and you need to be able to have that if you want. If you're wanting to be a striker in MMA, you have to be able to have a solid takedown defense because otherwise you are going to be limited and restricted. Will that, strength be able to stand up against somebody like a Derrida? I'm not entirely sure. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, he's tough. He's been in plenty of wars, and yes, he's been hurt on a few occasions. But again, like I say, he's been in back and forth wars and been able to, come out on top. And so, like I say, he is definitely a tough fighter. And I mean, that Paulo Costa fight was a good example of that. He's got a good jab and good boxing variations. He's a bit of a combination puncher who can kind of rush in from mid-range and catch you off guard with good combinations. He's got good timing at the same time. He can land well if you are coming in and catch you coming in, and typically he is able to, punch up, and he's used to fighting these taller opponents, which is definitely something that's going to benefit him. And again, something in which Derrida hasn't had to deal with is a fighter who's so used to fighting these, bigger fighters. Again, it's just that experience of Robert Whittaker. Bo Nickel hasn't got that level of experience, and Kevin Holland is a bigger fighter in his stature. So, like I say, he's not had to fight anybody who is the smaller guy, but also is used to punching up. So again, that's where Robert Whittaker's experience is going to come to play. He's got consistent good leg kicks that will definitely be able to try and, beat Derrida down. He's got good straight shots and he chips you down for the most part, and his kind of shots, he's often, like I say, able to rush in and push his shots straight through, which will be able to get through, and possibly catch Derrida off guard. Negativities, or I would say his physicality is a bit of a negative in his game. Again, when you have looked at when he's struggled, it's been against often physical opponents. I mean, Adesanya isn't particularly, but at Paulo Costa caught him with some quite strong shots, and Dricus du Plessis was able to pretty much manhandle him a bit at times as well. And like I say, that physicality, and again, of course, the Khamzat fight is another showcasing of that. I think he's not always able to really relieve the pressure, and especially in recent times, he doesn't seem to be able to get you off his back quite as well, and he can be controlled a bit more than perhaps what he was able to do a bit earlier on in his career. I don't feel like he deals with speed particularly well, and sometimes he kind of wants to be able to catch shots instead of avoid them, which again isn't really something I'd recommend. And when he fought Paulo Costa, he was catching quite a few head kicks instead of trying to slip them and avoid them, and he got rocked in that fight. Yes, he went on to win, but he still, like I say, he got rocked. He can be off balance when he's kicking himself. Again, I think that's when he can be a bit clumsy. He's got quite wide overhands, and of course, like I say, has been hurt. He can lunge in a bit at times, like I say, with these Russian attacks, and he his hands are low often when he is coming in. He has, of course, that limited use of wrestling. He does sometimes go for a takedown, but even then, it's difficult for him to be able to keep you down, and he isn't always able to, you know, well, he is able to get backed up quite consistently. Derrida as a fighter is a come forwards fighter, and he's not really had to fight on the back foot himself so far in his career. He's always a submission threat and can work off his back well. I mean, he was able to, you know, get somebody like a Bo Nickel off his back and be able to flip him and get into full mount, and that was, that's an impressive feat to be able to do, even though he was, the much bigger guy. Like I say, he's able to flip you around well and keep you on the ground. He throws a lot of knees, and yes, that can become predictable, but they're strong and they're footing, and to be able to knock somebody out with a knee to the stomach is a rare thing. Not many fighters have done that, and it clearly comes with a good amount of power coming into them shots. He's able to impose himself very well, and he is, often able to rough up the fight, and he might be able to, like I say, out physical Robert Whittaker in this fight. He carries obviously a decent level of power, and he's able to get out of bad spots like I talked about on the ground well and kind of posture out well. Negatives about him, I think he obviously is flat-footed and he stands tall, so he's definitely a big target there to be hit. He, I think, lets his ego get the better of him a little bit and sometimes likes to strike a bit more than perhaps what he should be. He's awkward when he's throwing and can look a bit hesitant, especially if he gets countered. Then he can look a bit reluctant and a bit, out of his comfort zone if he gets countered, and he's definitely there to be countered. He can give up his head when he's throwing and, like I say, coming in quite recklessly. He's predictable on his feet, like I say, when he is just continuously spamming the knees. He's got minimal defensive movement as a whole. He isn't really wanting to fight on the back foot. He squares up quite a lot. His boxing technique as a whole isn't amazing, and his speed is definitely lesser than that of a Robert Whittaker's. Who do I think is going to win? I think that Reinier Derrida is going to be able to win via TKO in round 3. Yes, that might be a little bit controversial. I feel like people would either be saying that Robert Whittaker is going to win via decision or that RDR is going to win via submission. So for me to say that it's a TKO, like I say, is a little bit controversial, but I just believe if he's able to, land a couple good shots against Whittaker, I don't feel like Whittaker's power is going to be enough to really deter him. Yes, catching him with a few counters might look good, and Whittaker could win the first 2 rounds, but if Derrida just keeps coming forward and keeps trying to manhandle and rough him up and get him in the clinch and just be able to tie him up, if he does just come through with these knees, or if he maybe switches in a nice elbow or something like that, then he can switch up his attacks, carry that power, and just, like I say, completely out physical Robert Whittaker. And I think that is how he's going to be able to go out there and get a stoppage against the number 5 ranked in the UFC. And so then, like I said, that's a huge win for him. I think that does elevate him. Perhaps he can go on to fight in Imavov if Imavov doesn't go on to fight Borralho. If not, then a Sean Strickland. I think that could be a possible good matchup. I don't know if Strickland would really want that, but I suppose he, coming off losses, doesn't have really much of a, can't really say too much. Or an Adesanya. Of course, Adesanya is still ranked relatively highly, and so that could still be a good fight there to be made, and perhaps one last opportunity for Adesanya to kind of go out against an upcoming contender. And so, yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. A like video if you did, like video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.